Hello and welcome to the Human Frequency. We hope you are having a lovely holiday wherever you may be. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to thank everyone who has contributed to us in the past week. You have helped to recover our cost for Project Newsome and hopefully are getting us into a situation where we can be ready to do our next gifting project, which is Salt Lake City.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody who contributed and also who supported our shop. We do still have a sale going, and we had a Black Thursday sale, but it's good through Christmas. So if you want to get some Orgonite at a discount, please use our discount code. It was Black Thursday 21, and that's all one word, Black Thursday 21. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody who helped us get back on our feet, because Project Newsome, the Gifting of Sacramento, was huge and it had astronomical results, some of which we're going to be talking about today. We've already covered it in a past video, but that is part of today's discussion about this ongoing drought situation, or what is perceived to be a drought. We're going to get more into that.
But first, I would also like to mention that we are considering doing a live stream thing on our channel, just sort of like a Q&A type thing where people can ask questions and we can talk, because a lot of our material, specifically in terms of regaining our true identities and losing our false identities, it's very difficult to convey certain information in any fashion other than just a one-on-one thing. So we may be available to help answer some questions relating to that and to a variety of other things. It's going to be an impromptu thing.
Yeah.
It's just nothing too scripted, but we are considering that in the future. So send us an email or leave us a comment and tell us what you think of an idea like that.
Yeah, and we're not the best at getting back to comments. We're not social media people, but we do reply to emails. The comments are for you, so you can chat amongst yourselves. And we always appreciate hearing from you. If you have some good feedback, or if you disagree, that's okay. We don't mind that. We just don't accept any hate speech or just anything hostile, or no mean people. You know, if somebody goes in and insults everybody who commented, we'll get rid of those. But we do very much appreciate your feedback, and it's okay if you disagree with us. You can let us know that too. But if you want to reply, please do email us. You can get our contact info through our website, thekembo.com.
We're back to using Gmail again. The proton mail experiment did not work.
Well, you know what's very funny about that? I do want to just mention this. People always tell me use proton mail. It's safer. It's more secure. And so I thought, okay, I'll try it. Maybe I won't get thrown immediately into spam if I do that. Well, somebody emailed me the other day from a proton mail, and Gmail put it in spam and gave me a message saying that Gmail automatically puts proton mails into spam. So it's not the solution either. We're just doing the best we can. So
it's an IP address thing.
Please do check your junk mail. Anytime you email us or buy anything from our shop or anything, any interactions with us, always check the junk mail. Sometimes I reach out to you, and maybe it's not because you've emailed me, but just because I want to say hello or thank you for your nice comments or for gifting Orgonite, and I never hear back. So I assume a lot of those are going straight to junk. So do check your junk mail.
So we have some, let's share our screen. We have some articles that we pulled up, some very relevant articles, interesting too. It's in the same vein as what we've talked about before, about how the media uses certain language to paint a certain picture for us or instill a narrative. I'm using that word a lot in this episode. There's some interesting things going on as we approach winter.
Today's discussion is about drought, and particularly the U.S. Drought Monitor. We're going to explain where this data comes from, what it all means, and why does it seem that the U.S. is in a perpetual state of drought all the time, no matter what's going on with the weather. So we're going to get into that. We're going to start with some local news so you can see what's going on in California. So here we have SF Gate, and this article is from a week ago. So this is an interesting one. We pulled this up because it's talking about what's going to happen, and we're also going to show what's actually happening and how it relates to this.
So it doesn't look good for San Francisco. Gee, what a shock! This publication is kind of leading the way in terms of disinfo, especially weather-related disinfo. But let's look at what they have to say.
You're gonna read
Okay,
to us.
after 2 atmospheric rivers hit the region, that's the caption for the photo, the Bay Area is
Oh,
dried
yeah.
up.
As you can see, though, this photo shows lovely OR skies. This is a healthy atmosphere over San Francisco. And atmospheric rivers is a made-up term the meteorologists use because they cannot explain that when there's an orgone energy transmutation in the atmosphere, it causes a lot of water vapor to come together into clouds and to fall as rain. So they call it an atmospheric river because they don't know what's actually happening.
All right, they say there's no rain in sight for the San Francisco Bay Area in the next 10 days, a concerning dry weather spell for a region plagued by drought. So right off the bat, you see the language that they're using, and 10 days. This goes back to what I've talked about in previous episodes, where they're using cherry picking. They're picking a spot between storms where they can whine about how dry it is, but because they know that it's wet before and it's wet after. This is cherry picking, and they use this tactic all the time. While there are hints of a shift to wetter and cooler conditions toward mid-December, some experts say the forecast for rain doesn't look convincing. We look out 10 to 14 days, and even beyond that, there doesn't look like there's any substantial rain on the horizon, said Brian Garcia, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service. This is just me. I really don't think we're going to get any substantial rain the rest of this calendar year.
It's funny, they said 10 to 14 days. So of course, we're going to show you now that it's a week has passed since the article, but we'll get to that.
I like that. This is just me. Like he's the only one who's saying this and everyone else is saying differently. No, they are all saying this.
Well, that's the narrative from the National Weather Service, and they're required to state the company line.
Local forecaster Jan Null of Golden Gate Weather Services is more hopeful. Null said there's still more than a full month ahead of us to get rain before the end of the year. Really? They went to college to figure that one out. It's the end of November and there's more than a month left till the end of the year. Thank you for clearing that up. I wouldn't go that far, he said, of the potential for no rain in December. I'd be surprised if we didn't see any rain. Okay. So let's interesting. Null noted that in 1997, when he was working for the Weather Service, models showed high pressure over the region with no rain in the long-term forecast. Then, 2 days before New Year's Day, the model suggested storm activity. It was an atmospheric river, there's that term again, the trail all the way to Hawaii, Null said. In 2 days' time, the models changed greatly. The models are obviously better now. We've talked about this before. This is all about models. Everything is based upon these models.
Computer models. So they're taking a bunch of things that are happening and just comparing it to things that happened other times because they're unable to actually forecast. So they're just looking for common conditions. So that's what the models mean.
By the way, if they used the term atmospheric river back in 1997, these people would be pilloried and having tomatoes thrown at them. This is a new term. This is a new term to explain away certain things that they're having difficulty explaining, but they could never have gotten away with this term, using this term 25 years ago. It's ridiculous.
Back then, they used to just say El Nino. That's what they would say. It's an El Nino year. Incidentally, I just wanted to mention that at the end of 1997, in December, it was a very DOR-ish period. I actually was in a very abusive relationship that I ended at that time. And during the time of getting out of that relationship, I was very, very depressed. And the skies were unbelievably DOR-ish. I didn't know what that was at the time, but I remember it being very DOR-ish. Then I moved out and got into my own place, and I felt this exhilarating feeling on New Year's Day of 1998. And I felt so free, and the atmosphere was pristine. It was an OR atmosphere, extreme shift that happened just in those few days while I was leaving that situation and getting into a new one. I've always felt that these weather events have been very connected with my life, and undoubtedly, all of us are affecting the weather with our minds, but I've always had a very, very strong connection with weather. I've been obsessed with weather from the time I was aware of it. So this time period of late 97, it was incredibly dark and dreary and DOR-ish, but no rain. And then as soon as I got out of that relationship, everything lifted. The sky was pristine blue to the horizon, and there were puffy OR clouds over the ocean to the west. So it's interesting that that time corresponded with a major shift. I have others too. I have many others, but this one was noteworthy to me.
I don't remember exactly that time. I was in 7th grade, but I'll take your word for it.
It was amazing. I did note the DOR and the OR shift without having the language for it at the time.
So the article continues. The Weather Service looks at a dozen forecast models that help pinpoint the weather as far as 2 weeks out. It's difficult to predict the weather with accuracy beyond 7 days, but these models can provide a suggestion of conditions beyond a week. Garcia said the models are in a pattern where they have been pushing any signal of rain to the end of the forecast period. You run them one day and they provide a weak signal of rain 14 days out. The next day, the chance for rain is still 14 days out. So you see, this is, again, it's all models, and this is a suggestion of conditions. So again, there's no actual human looking at reality here. It's all just computers providing their models. And then he goes on to say, when that happens, that's the models trying to lean toward a climatological solution, because this time of year, we're supposed to see rain, but it's not happening. So it keeps pushing it back, Garcia explained. When we see that continual pushback, that's when we know there's going to be no rain. This is really interesting. They use the term pushback. This is a term we use too in talking about the OR versus DOR battle. The San Francisco Bay Area saw a promising start to the rainy season. It's actually before rainy season. But
right. This is in October. So this isn't the results of Project Newsom. So if you want to look at what we did in Sacramento and the results were as astronomical in San Francisco as they were in Sacramento. It was off the charts. So read on for these amazing statistics.
But at the risk of being repetitive, rainy season in California does not start in October. It starts at the very end of November, or around where December begins.
Right. The meteorologists, they say the rain year starts October 1st. They use that date specifically so that they can say we had a poor start to the rain year, because the rain actually usually starts after Thanksgiving. That's when it becomes stronger. But this year it was different because of the work we did in Sacramento, and we saw astronomical rain in October. These statistics are off the charts.
A historic atmospheric river drenched Northern California in October, and precipitation totals shot up well above normal. It was a monstrous storm that's rarely seen so early in the rainy season, and the soaking ended wildfire season in Northern California. In November, another storm, weaker than the one in October, yet still rich in moisture, swept the region. Since then, the Bay Area has seen little rain. In October, precipitation totals were hundreds of percentage points above normal. Downtown San Francisco recorded 7.04 inches of rain in October. That's 750% above average. The Santa Rosa Airport saw 10.76 inches, 647% of it.
Average.
Above average.
It says of average. Yeah, they get confused between above and of, but as you can see, it's astronomical amounts of rain.
They are confounding the two, but yeah, it's well above what they consider normal. And the Oakland Airport, 5.32 inches, 605% of normal. So
if they mean of, so if they say 750% of average, it's still astronomical. I mean, 100% is I'm trying to imagine the amount above average. Well, here's how they explain it so that we can know how much above average this was. In November, you want to read this?
In November, the Bay Area is likely to end up drier than normal. Of course, this is on November 29th. San Francisco has recorded 1.28 inches of rain since November 1st. Normal precipitation for the month is 2.6 inches.
So what we're seeing is they're saying now, if this data is correct, that the rainfall in November was perhaps about 50% of average. But if it was 750% of average the month before, we are still hundreds of percentage points above average for the rainy season right now. So they're trying to give us this bleak forecast, when in actuality, if they combine the months, we'd see we're still well above average.
Yeah. And Mr. Gloom and Doom weather forecaster goes on to say, it's the season of giving, but the atmosphere will not be giving rain to us, said Garcia. It will be giving us sunshine. You want to say something about that? Because this is bad news for the Bay Area, where drought conditions persist after 2 consecutive dry winters. And again, this is on the heels of a big rainstorm.
The San Francisco Public Utilities Commission on Tuesday declared a water shortage emergency and is calling on nearly 3 million of its customers in San Francisco and 3 other Bay Area counties to take shorter showers and conserve water. The commission supplies water to San Francisco residents and wholesale water to customers in portions of Alameda, San Mateo, and Santa Clara counties. The declaration asks for a 5% reduction in water use in San Francisco and 13.7% among wholesale customers. The reductions are based on the fiscal year of 2019 and 2020 levels, the commission said. So they are basing it on actually a lower water time, because during COVID, when that was happening, all this depression, people ask me about this, what happened in 2020? I mean, when you've got a ton of depressed people, 50 million depressed Californians, for example, that are being having their businesses disrupted, having their lives destroyed. This is the kind of stuff that impacts the atmosphere. It really has a direct impact. So 2020 was a less of a rain year. However, we started off this rainy season with a bang. So why are they reducing the water now? We will get into that more when we go into what comprises the US Drought Monitor, because that's ultimately what this is going to be about, is where do they get this from? These water shortages or declared water shortages have a lot to do with what they're saying about drought.
So I just remember that part about this Utilities Commission and making their declaration.
Let's look at the actual weather in the Bay Area coming up. So this article was written a week ago. They said no rain for 10 days. Well, that was correct. Because they were picking that amount of time. Because if you look at the outlook here, 10 days after the article, yeah, still sunny, then mostly sunny. And then we have rain, 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 rain.
Several straight days of rain. And what's really important to note is that we figured this out. Once the percentage, the precipitation percentage chance reaches 25%, that's when they put this little rain insignia on there. But take a look at all these 4 days, 24% each day. It's literally 1 percentage point under where they have to put the insignia there. So what this actually is a week and a half straight of rain. So you can basically imagine those partly cloudy days as being rain days, which they will be. So this is,
they know that you're not going to look into it.
You have to look at the tactics. It's the language they use, and even just something. I know this sounds really, really stupid and trivial, and it is. But look at it. They're obscuring reality because they know that people aren't going to look deeper.
They know you're just going to look. Most people are on a smartphone. They're just going to look at page 1. They're not going to understand it. As soon as this reaches 25%, there's a rain insignia. They think, oh, they don't have a rain insignia. There's no rain.
So when they say no rain in sight, well, you'd have to be pretty short-sighted to not see 10, potentially more straight days of rain. That's just as far as the forecast goes. It could be more than that even.
So here's some more local news in regards to what's happening with this major OR shift happening right now. LA Times, fog rolls in, worsening air quality in Los Angeles basin and delaying flights. I have never heard fog being called air pollution before. Smog, yes, but not fog. So let's take a look a little bit at what's going on locally. On Sunday, we had fog throughout Southern California and Central California. There was even a deadly plane crash in Tulare County because of the poor visibility. I know that somebody I know came up from Bakersfield up to the mountains, and he said it was so cold, his hands were freezing that morning when he was loading his horse into his trailer, and it was just very foggy and wintry. So we're already having these kind of conditions happening.
Yes, and you discovered years ago that fog is an OR transmutation.
Yes, fog is low clouds, ground level OR transmutation. So sometimes fog and smog are mixed up with each other, because when energy shifts, the DOR that was holding that smog in and causing that stagnant air shifts. We then have an OR atmosphere, and the pollution lifts and the water vapor comes together through that hydrogen bonding of water molecules, something the meteorologists aren't talking about. So I'm just going to read a little of this one, because it's interesting that now they're putting a negative spin on something as positive as an OR transmutation in the lower atmosphere. Heavy fog cut visibility, snarled air traffic at Hollywood Burbank Airport on a busy travel day, and worsened air quality in the Los Angeles basin on Sunday. This is very odd stuff. I've never heard that until this year, that they're calling fog air pollution. The Air Quality Management District extended a no-burn order for another 24 hours, prohibiting most residents in the region from lighting fireplaces, bonfires or campfires, or burning wood by any other means through Monday at 11:59 p.m. The wood burning ban covers Orange County and non-desert areas of Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties, the AQMD's order said. The reason for the ban is because wood smoke contains tiny particulates that can lodge in the lungs and cause asthma attacks and other health problems. I will mention there's not really a ban. I mean, because the thing is, in Los Angeles and Orange County, in these areas, no one uses wood for fuel, but in the desert they do. So
But
it's
the
allowed
desert
there.
areas are
They're allowed to.
exempted.
In the mountains they do. So this is not really a ban in actuality, nor does it have any grounding in reality, because fog is not a reason to prohibit the burning of wood.
It's just a show, basically. And may I read the next paragraph?
Sure.
Because this is my favorite part. We've experienced many days of poor air quality since November, said Kim White, a spokeswoman for the AQMD. While we frequently experience poor air quality this time of year when we have stagnant conditions, we've experienced more days of high fine particulate matter than normal this winter. First of all, has this lady bothered to look at a calendar? Because she would see that we're still 2 weeks away from winter. Hello?
It's fall.
And secondly, there hasn't been poor air quality in November. We've actually been into LA County more than normal in that very span of time, and we did pay attention to what the sky looked like during that time.
It was very good air quality. We went in week after week during November because I was getting another printing done of the book, and we had a lot to do related to that. So we were going in and seeing in LA. We were in Santa Clarita, just north of Los Angeles, absolutely pristine air quality.
It's funny. I see this thing on the side about fact checkers. Where are the fact checkers when it comes to this statement? They're talking about winter and it's not even winter yet. It's mind boggling. I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. We talk all the time about the lies that the media use, all of their tactics they use to promote drought and to downplay good weather.
This is an interesting part to me, and this is one I wanted to bring up because I discovered a few years ago that marine layer and fog are both forms of our transmutation. The meteorologists don't understand this. So I'm going to read what he says, this meteorologist says about the fog. Joe Serrard, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, blamed a low, strong marine layer, also known as an inversion, for the persistent fog and bad air. The marine layer and fog are the same thing. The marine layer didn't cause the fog. Both of the marine layer and the fog were caused by an energetic shift that caused water molecules to bond in the lower atmosphere at ground level. The marine layer is a stable layer of air, he said Sunday. It does not allow the air below it to move around and keeps the air close to the ground without any mixing. Clouds form below the inversion and can't dissipate until the sun burns them off. And he says if the inversion layer is strong, it'll trap smoke. This is actually not true at all. Marine layer is the opposite of pollution. Smog, on the other hand, if he was talking about smog, it would make more sense. Smog is stagnant air. It's bad air. It's DOR causing the air pollution to linger at the ground level. But this is not what fog is. So he's completely off base on what this is. He says that it will not allow the pollution to leave. If there is fog and marine layer, the pollution has already left. That is my point regarding that.
And they're just confounding two different things.
And at the end of the article, he does say that we are going to get some rain. He says, and on Tuesday, expect some light precipitation, enough for a raincoat maybe, but you can probably leave the umbrella home. I wouldn't, it would mess up my hair. But anyway, I think you should take the umbrella, not the raincoat. He says, think a few hundredths of an inch. He's saying, think a few hundredths to
Manifest.
Manifest. Make it so.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Make it really, really low.
So now
we talk about this all the time too, about how our thoughts, how our emotional state manifests what's going on in the sky. And that's definitely the case. And they know this, and they're trying to use the humans to manifest less rain.
Right. And that's what I was talking about COVID during 2020. There was less rain. That's to be expected. I'm amazed we got any at all. The people were so depressed and downtrodden. It's amazing we got any rain at all. So that's what's going on. And here is what they're saying about the drought monitor. So every week on Thursday, a new drought monitor is issued, and it always looks pretty bad, I have to say. I mean, this drought monitor covers a lot more of the country than just California. Many, many areas. These are the current conditions from this week's drought monitor. As you can see, there's areas in the east that are not experiencing any drought. However, many places you would not expect. We have here in the south and in Mississippi and Alabama, we have abnormally dry. Throughout the Midwest and even the mountain areas, we're seeing, especially in the West, severe, extreme, exceptional. Now, where do these things come from? That's what we're going to talk about, because this drought narrative is not what you think it is. So that's why you might ask yourself, for example, here in California, Northern California, we see red. That's extreme drought. We're seeing red in a place that had 750% of average rainfall in October and is still well above average. And now a water emergency has been declared. How is this possible that this is an extreme drought when there's been so much rain?
You also have to look at where are they measuring from. This goes back to what I was saying about cherry picking data. They could be measuring if there's a period of time, say 7 days or 10 days, whatever it may be, between storms, they will focus on that period of time when it's dry so that they can put out maps like this.
When it comes to the drought monitor, it is per date. So it's every week. It's the weekly conditions, but it's not the dates that are causing the cherry picking in this case. It's the data used to create the map. So yes, in the news stories, it's obvious what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Here, it's not so obvious. So I decided to go in and tell you exactly what's going on here. So I'm going to close. This is the current conditions. As you can see, California, the whole thing is, this is why the media says gripped by drought. Interestingly enough, down in the very south areas, even the Sahara of North America, according to Wilhelm Reich, El Centro area is actually only in moderate drought.
The least of the
very
entire
interesting.
state.
So where is this data coming from? So this is the homepage of a website called drought.gov. And I could put a link to that in the description. You could read it in more detail. We're only going to go over it in a cursory fashion because it's extremely boring. And I don't want your head to hit the table while you're looking at this, but let's go and discuss what the drought monitor is.
Believe me, it almost happens to me looking through
it's extremely boring.
Some of these statistics, because they're all made up, but it's not just enough to know that they're made up. You have to understand why and how they do it.
They're loosely based in fact. That's how they do it. I'm going to read to you from here. The U.S. Drought Monitor is updated each Thursday to show the location and intensity of drought across the country. Drought categories show experts' assessments of conditions related to dryness and drought, including observations of how much water is available in streams, lakes, and soils compared to usual for the same time of year. So I'm going to click on Learn More, and I'm going to read on. So the U.S. Drought Monitor is updated every Thursday, and it uses a 5-category system labeled abnormally dry, which is a precursor to drought, not actually drought, moderate, severe, extreme, and exceptional drought. Drought categories show experts' assessments of conditions related to dryness and drought, including observations of how much water is available in streams, lakes, and soils compared to the usual for that time of year. The U.S. Drought Monitor began in 2000 and is a collaboration between the NDMC, NOAA, where we get our weather maps from, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the USDA, who share a weekly author role for the product. The NDMC, based at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, leads to the coordination of weekly drought monitor process and provides the maps, data, and statistics to the public. So you see that there's many people involved in this, and they're all sharing data and coming up with this. And that all sounds very reputable, but I want you to understand what the data actually is.
Another thing that also began around the year 2000 is organite gifting.
That's true.
Just some food for thought.
That is very interesting. And that was actually a real end to the droughts across the country. Now, of course, it's a constant battle. We're going to have dry periods and wet periods. this is a constant fight for rain because everything is against rain in this world. And if you've looked at our other videos, you understand the energetic war against rain and against us. But the fight for rain involves us clearing our minds, becoming more positive and doing something, actually doing something to help Mother Nature make the rain.
Absolutely. I get emails all the time from people saying, I gifted some Morganite. Where's the rain? Well, it's an ongoing battle. You can't just do a little bit of gifting and expect that you're going to be fine from here on out. It doesn't work that way.
Right. And it's an ongoing program. And the goal is drought. Our goal is rain. And let me read to you where they actually get the data for the drought monitor. This may alleviate a lot of your fears of drought when you know this. Each week, drought experts consider how recent precipitation totals across the country compare to their long-term averages. Now that's good. They're looking at rain. That's one thing, but there's more. They check variables including temperatures, soil moisture, water levels in streams and lakes, snow cover, and meltwater runoff. Experts also check whether areas are showing drought impacts, such as water shortages and business interruptions. Now, I'm going to stop there for a minute because I do want to explain. Temperature is not rain. So we're seeing variables that are not rain. And so they're including temperatures in their drought data. Soil moisture is another tricky one. We live in the mountains and we live in a forest, but there are many, many cleared areas, and a lot of the places where people live are cleared. The grass in the cleared areas is yellow. The grass in the forest currently is green. So you're seeing soil moisture can differ even in one area because we got a ton of rain in October. Even for here, it was a lot. And the grass started growing green in the forest early this year. But out in the open areas, it's not that way because the forest is shaded and it holds in the moisture. So it's going to be different. So you have to take into account that soil moisture, it depends where you're measuring it from.
Exactly. In other words, will these drought experts be measuring in a cleared area, or will they be going into the forest where the grass is green? My money's on the cleared areas.
Water levels in streams and lakes and snow cover are both things that are variable throughout the year. Snow cover is absent in the summer. And I've noted that a lot of news articles during the summer citing drought in California were saying there's no snow cover. But we live in the mountains. It snows here. Even on the highest peaks here, they do not have snow in the summer. So now I'm hoping that they're considering that, but I'm not sure because there are dozens of other indicators. We'll get into a few. They don't tell us all of them here in the synopsis, but also meltwater runoff. That is also variable throughout the year. So it also depends on temperature. If it's very, very cold, there will be less meltwater. If it's warmer, there will be more meltwater. So you cannot really measure drought based on the snowpack. In fact, that there are some criticisms of these measuring systems, even out in the mainstream. So we'll get to that too.
Well, my main criticism, just real quick, is that having all of these variables allows them to pick and choose what suits their agenda and discard what doesn't. That's the main problem.
I'm highlighting something very important here. Experts also check whether areas are showing drought impacts, such as water shortages and business interruptions. Now, business interruptions, that's across the world. Okay, I'm curious how that factors into drought, but I have seen a piece of paper from our local water company that said, the state of California is in a drought. If you know anything about business and reality, you'll know the state of California is not a place, but a business. California is a place, but they said the state of California is in a drought. And in fact, that may be true because business is being disrupted. So we have business interruptions and they're factoring that into the drought data. You've got ships off the shore of Los Angeles. They are not allowing them in. That's a business interruption. COVID closures of business. That's a business interruption. So they're not explaining how they factor that in. They're also saying water shortages. Here where we live, our water company has said we're having a water shortage. Yet I've seen no problems with the water supply here. The people who have wells in the area, some of them have been having problems. And it turns out more often than not that these well issues are actually mechanical problems with their wells, not actually shortage of water in an aquifer.
Right.
I know somebody personally who said, oh, our water tank went down a lot. We're having a water shortage. I said, are you sure it's the water level or is it something wrong with your well or your plumbing? And he's like, I don't want to know. I said, well, you might want to look into that. And then in fact, he did look into it.
It was equipment.
He said, oh yeah, it was a plumbing leak. He got it fixed. his tank filled up again. He says, my well is pumping all kinds of water. So
Yep.
a lot of time, and I've talked with other people too, they're having mechanical problems with their wells. I've got 3 words for you: Fraser Park plumbers. A lot of these guys are hacks. I'm not just going to say they're all, but there's a lot of bad plumbers up here. And
But the point is, it's got nothing to do with the
not
aquifers.
the aquifers. And sometimes a well will go dry. There's one in the same neighborhood where the guy was having plumbing issues. The well actually did go dry. They got a well driller out, drilled a new well in a new spot. They're up and running again. So we do have to remember that water shortages are declared by municipalities. When the water shortage was declared in San Francisco, that is factored into this data. So when you look at that drought monitor, water shortages is part of how they determine it. So even though they had 750% of average rainfall in San Francisco, by the way, in Sacramento, they had a record-breaking day too, 5.44 inches in one day. That shattered the record since they started keeping records in the 1890s. So they're saying water shortage. They could say that, and then the drought
And the
monitor will
map is
reflect
based
that.
on that, not on these huge amounts of rain that they've been having ahead of schedule, by the way.
So this goes on to explain based on dozens of indicators. So there's a lot more of indicators besides the rainfall. Experts make their best judgments, so opinion, of regional scale drought conditions, and then check their assessments with experts in the field before publishing the weekly drought maps. They have to okay it with their superiors before publishing it. The narrative has to say what is in the best interest of the companies putting out the information. And these are businesses. Like I mentioned, the state of California is a business, and the state of California is in a drought. The state of California is experiencing business interruptions. It is business. NOAA is a business. The US Drought Monitor is actually a subsidiary of the United States, which is a business. It's all business, and it's in their interest to promote drought because it raises much more revenue. When water is scarce, then obviously they can charge more for it.
And it's that simple.
So in this, I'm going to only show you a little bit more here because it's going to be too boring, but if you click on the weekly summary, it will take you off of drought.gov and will take you to the US Drought Monitor website, which is out of the University of Lincoln, Nebraska. And I'm only going to read a little here because I think that it's important to see. They call it a narrative, okay? And a narrative is a story. In the Southeast, they use this kind of language. By the time the cold fronts reached the Southeast, the only precipitation they could muster was less than ½ an inch. And that was only in parts of northern Alabama. The rest of the region had little to no precipitation, with dryness intensifying over the last 3 months and soils continuing to be dry. Abnormal dryness and moderate drought expanded, and areas of severe drought developed in the Carolinas and Virginia. This is how they create the story. So
and this consistently downplays all instances of rain that exists and focuses it's not balanced at all.
Right. And these last 3 months they're describing are still warm months of the year when there is less rain and more evaporation. So they're now calling summer drought, because if you're looking at these factors to create drought maps, then summer is drought by their own definition of drought. I would like to just go on to an area that has no drought right now because of astronomical rains. The Northwest was absolutely slammed. They were underwater. It was actually very destructive. There was 3 Organite gifters responsible for this, and we're thankful to them for releasing the blockage. And hopefully now things will become a little bit more calm and a little more normal there. But in the Northwest, there was astronomical rain. So I'm just going to go over the West, because even in the drought monitor map, they're still showing drought in Oregon, which is very strange because they were slammed too.
And go back real quick, because
To where?
Just hit back.
You want to go back to the drought monitor?
Yeah, back again. So I'm gonna do the thing. Scroll down there. Yeah, there it is right there. View the weekly narrative. They are even calling it a narrative. Look up narrative in the dictionary. I mean, it's a story. They're telling a story. And when you're telling a story, they're not going to include stuff that doesn't support their agenda.
Right.
They're going to leave that out of it. That's why these guys in the field, they have to okay their findings with their superiors, because they don't want anything positive getting into these reports.
If you remember when we did the reports on the fire situation in California and the West, the wildfire problems over the summer, could note that they would make it look like a fire was going longer than it was by just not declaring it contained, even if rain had already put it out. So they can pick and choose what they want to create a false reality. And with the fires, it was definitely a false reality. If a fire's out, it's out. Why make people think it's still going? A lot of this is because if you don't live in a region and you read this, you're going to assume this is true. So I was just going to go over the West really quick, an area really that doesn't have drought right now. Here we are in the West. Pacific weather systems brought 0.5 to 3.0 inches of precipitation to coastal portions of Oregon and Washington, with 5 inches or more falling in non-drought areas of Northwest Washington. Half an inch to locally 2 inches also fell over parts of the Northern Rockies, while locally up to half an inch occurred over a few parts of the Southern Rockies. Otherwise, much of the West was dry. This is because this is last week. So this is last week. Otherwise, much of the West was dry. That's true. Drying soils and a mounting 3-month precipitation deficits prompted expansion of moderate to extreme drought in parts of New Mexico. Now, I have to comment here. I wasn't even going to talk about our summer project, but there has not been a deficit in New Mexico. Project Monsoon actually brought huge amounts of rain to New Mexico. If you go back to those videos on that topic, the project and results videos, you'll see, I don't know if I included it in that, it might be on the blog, but there was an article specifically about farmers growing hay in New Mexico saying, this is wonderful. We don't even have to water the hay. There's so much rain. So there isn't really what they're saying here. 3 months precipitation deficit is not true actually, but they're probably using specific data to arrive at that.
Mm-hmm.
Plus summertime is a less rainy time of year. Into early fall, it is a less rainy time of year.
This is why they use, like I was saying, this is why they have all of these variables they can use. They can pick and choose stuff.
Well,
it doesn't all have to be included.
And here's what they chose. November 28th, USDA reports had 81% of New Mexico's topsoil short or very short of moisture. So it's topsoil they're looking at. Mm-hmm. Topsoil, it's not rain they're looking at. And evaporation is a fact of life. It also is influenced by factors like tree cover. I mean, all over the US, we have deforestation. That's a cause of this as well, if they're just measuring topsoil moisture. So this is just what I wanted to briefly go into. As you can see, there are so many factors influencing these drought maps.
Yeah, if they looked at that on a different day or looked at a different variable, they might not arrive at that conclusion, but it's about the narrative. It's about everything fitting into place to promote this sort of thing. And here's some more interesting stuff.
This is how they classify drought. So I mentioned the 5-tiered system. These are the 5 tiers of drought. And I think it would be good to focus on the extreme and exceptional, which is what most of California is in. So here with extreme drought, they're talking about impacts of it, major crop or pasture losses, and widespread water shortages or restrictions. It's a fact that when a municipal water company says we're restricting water, the farmers can't get what they need. So if you're seeing crop loss, it might not be because there's actually a lack of water. It might be because a water shortage was declared. All over California, you'll see signs on the sides of the freeways. Farmers are like, we need water. Water for crops is not a waste of water. They're suffering because
it's being withheld from them.
It's being withheld.
Not too dissimilar from what's going on at the ports down in San Pedro.
Exactly. And that's affecting everybody's business. And that there's the business interruptions again. So in exceptional drought, you may see exceptional and widespread crop pasture losses and shortages of water in reservoirs, streams, and wells, creating water emergencies. These are 3 different things. Reservoirs, streams, and wells are 3 different things. Reservoirs are drained all the time, and they're purposely drained much of the time. Streams are affected by snowmelt, which is different from time to year. In the summer, you won't see a lot of the streams flowing in California. Does that mean there's a drought and that water should be withheld from our farmers?
No, it means that it's summer and that it's not flowing for a few months, and it will again when the rains come. It's all about cycles.
And now they're also mentioning wells.
We've
And
already talked about
wells. Yeah,
wells.
that's an issue because it may be any mechanical function of the well causing this. Not to mention primary water, which we talked about in a past video, where it was the video on a fictional drought for a fictional state, where I explained that the state of California was in a drought and that had nothing to do with reality. And you can check that out too if you want to know more about that. But primary water is where the water comes from, and it's infinite, it's abundant. So this whole thing here is aimed at shortages, at increasing water rates, at increasing fear and reducing food. That's another huge problem. It's the farmers are really affected by this.
Yeah. And they got this this number system to denote how severe the droughts are.
This is
Called
called
the Palmer Drought Index. It's sometimes called the Palmer Drought Severity Index, which is silly. They got to make it sound scarier. But it's this number system that they use.
And so this is actually has been criticized, but this is where they're getting their numbers from. So one more thing, one little more food for thought here before we close, because I understand that this drought stuff and there's so much on those websites. I say go check it out. If it's boring to you, I fully sympathize because it's not reality. It's a lot of computer modeling. It's a lot of factors, and there's a lot of bureaucracy involved too in deciding these things. So the Palmer Drought Severity Index is how they're coming up with these numbers. So when you see the negative numbers, that means there's drought, and that is most of the country. It's a regional drought index commonly used for monitoring drought events and studying areal extent and severity of drought episodes. The index uses precipitation and temperature data to study moisture supply and demand using a simple water balance model. It was developed by meteorologist Wayne Palmer, who first published his method in the 1965 paper Meteorological Drought for the Office of Climatology of the US Weather Bureau. So I will mention they are using precipitation and temperature data. Again, temperature is not a measure of drought. That's something else, but that's how they do this. The Palmer Drought Index is based on a supply and demand model of soil moisture. And again, that's not rain. Supply is comparatively straightforward to calculate, but demand is more complicated as it depends on many factors, not just temperature and the amount of moisture in the soil, but hard to calibrate factors, including evapotranspiration and recharge rates. Evapotranspiration is the sum of water evaporation and transpiration from a surface area to the atmosphere. You see, they're talking about stuff that's not rain.
Yeah.
Palmer tried to overcome these difficulties by developing an algorithm that approximated them based on most readily available data, precipitation, and temperature. The index has proven most effective in determining long-term drought, a matter of several months, but is not as good with conditions over a matter of weeks. And interestingly, it is conditions week to week that the US Drought Monitor is measuring, and they are using this Palmer Drought Index for that. You're seeing that there's some dubious information going into this drought monitor. More than some, yes. It uses 0 as normal, and drought is shown in terms of negative numbers. For example, -2 is moderate drought, -3 is severe drought, -4 is extreme drought. Palmer's algorithm is also used to describe wet spells using corresponding positive numbers. Palmer also developed a formula for standardizing drought calculations for each individual location based on the variability of precipitation and temperature at this location. The Palmer Index can therefore be applied to any site for which sufficient precipitation and temperature data is available. Critics have argued that the utility of the Palmer Index is weakened by the arbitrary nature of Palmer's algorithms, including the technique used for standardization. The Palmer Index's inability to account for snow and frozen ground is also cited as a weakness. So I think I could stop there, but you could see what this is. So this is yet another factor in how they measure drought. In fact, one of the primary ways they measure the drought. All right. I think
let's end
on a good note.
Let's end with reality. Let's end
Yes.
with reality. And the reality is, look at what's in store for the very areas that they're making as red as possible on these drought maps.
Well, and interestingly enough, also NOAA is my main source for information on weather, and other than my own observations and predictions, but I do use their predictions to help me to know. And NOAA is also one of the companies involved in the drought monitor. And here is their 7-day outlook for the country and take a look at California. We are now rivaling the Pacific Northwest for precipitation. It's finally coming through again, as it did in October. It's back. And
it's all over the entire state.
It's massive. It's astronomical.
Yeah, Noah's going to have to build an ark.
Look at that.
Sorry. That was terrible, but I'll just show myself.
We got to stop right there. Stop the share. So that is what it's all about. That's what the U.S. Drought Monitor is all about. If you're looking at that drought monitor and you're afraid, let your fears be alleviated by the knowledge that dozens of these drought indicators are not actually anything to do with rain.
And we were just hitting the highlights here. I mean, you can get lost in a lot of these web pages, and like you were saying, a lot of it is just like you're ready to fall asleep at most of it. But like you were saying, it's not the way they're portraying it to be. You have to look at the language that they use, and you have to look deeper at everything. I can't stress this enough. People who do not look deeply into things, not just about this, but about any issue. If you don't look deeply, you're going to be lied to. You're not going to be given the full story. At the very least, it'll be slanted to suit whatever agenda they're peddling. Right. And this is how fear is perpetuated throughout the society. And weather, especially during the months of between May and November, that is prime time for them to peddle their fear, because at least in California, it doesn't rain during those times.
Not usually, but it's starting to more because of the work we've been doing.
And that's the interesting thing. This summer, it actually did rain during those times. Of course, they ignore that. You have to look at the language that they're using and the steps that they are taking, the great lengths they're going to manipulate data and arrive at the conclusions they want to arrive at. It's got nothing to do with reality.
Well, interestingly enough, I got all of this from their own websites. So it's not hidden. You can see it out there. You got to look for it. And if you just look at a news article at face value and you read it real fast, you're not going to notice even the contradictions within the article. So, I mean, the article from the SF Gate we went over, it was saying, oh, November, boo-hoo, we got like an inch and change of rain, and we're supposed to get 2 inches of rain. This is nothing compared to what happened in October and what's coming in December. This is the natural balance of weather. It is a little bit unpredictable. There will be a lot at once, and then there'll be a dry period, and then there'll be more, and this is normal. This is nothing to be afraid of. But with georestoration, with Orgonite around California, every city's been done now. Sacramento listed a huge blockage. We're seeing only an increase and an increase. So they're having to use more and more of these non-rain related factors to create false drought. And it is indeed a false narrative. It's a false version of reality. Your own eyes tell you one thing, but their news stories tell you another. It's time to look at it with your own eyes.
Understand what they're doing when they're measuring during those dry periods that they know are going to be dry periods, and it suits their agenda to measure it during that dry period. And also know what they're doing when they're doing something as stupid as the little icon that they use for that day. Look deeply into things and question everything.
Yes.
You have to. Thank you so much for listening. Our website is www.thekembo.com. We've got links to everything. We've got our frequently asked questions, and we've got our email addresses. Please shoot us an email. Let us know how we're doing, and please check your junk mail.
Yeah, and let us know if you're interested in the live stream idea. We'd like to be able to do more of a one-on-one Q&A. The more we've gotten into these topics with people, as far as your true identity that Gabe was talking about, and returning to God, and all of these things, and how it applies to your life, and how you navigate this really bizarre world we live in, and stay free and keep your wealth and your health and all these things that you're trying to achieve. We're finding that the videos alone and our synopsis of this stuff is not enough to help you understand. So we think maybe the live stream idea will allow you to send us a question directly, and then we can answer them one by one. So if that sounds good to you, we'll learn how to do it. We're always willing to learn new technology and figure these things out.
Yep, just let us know.
Yeah.
And please have a happy and safe holidays and a healthy new year. We will talk to you again soon.